When my husband asked for a divorce after 15 years of marriage, I silently agreed and signed the papers. He was busy celebrating with his lover at our favorite restaurant when I walked up to their table with a friendly smile saying, "Congratulations on your new freedom." I slid an envelope across the table, and as he read the DNA test report, his confident grin vanished. The report proved that a bright red lipstick stain was on a crisp white cotton shirt, and that was the moment my marriage quietly unraveled. Not with a loud argument, but with the silent shock of a hidden truth. I stood frozen in our walk-in closet, holding his dress shirt in trembling hands. I remember that day perfectly. A Tuesday at 9:17 in the morning when our twins were off to school and our daughter was at her piano lesson. I had been gathering clothes for dry cleaning when I noticed my husband's gym bag tucked away behind his neatly arranged Oxford shoes. The zipper was slightly open, revealing a crumpled shirt he claimed to have worn for an emergency surgery the night before. The stain wasn't medical. No surgeon would ever wear that vivid shade of red into an operating room. Before I share more about my shocking discovery, I'd like to invite you to join our community of storytellers. If stories of strength in the face of betrayal resonate with you, please subscribe and help support more accounts of women reclaiming their power. Now let's see how this seemingly perfect life started to fall apart. My heart was pounding as 15 years of marriage suddenly condensed into one damning piece of evidence. Dr. Benjamin Harris, a respected heart surgeon, the father of our 3 children, and the man I thought I knew, had been hiding the truth. There was another woman's kiss, visible on his clothes. The perfect life I thought we had was shattered right before my eyes. For years, Benjamin's colleagues had praised us as the ideal couple. Him, with his steady hands saving lives every day, and me with my unwavering support for our family. Our beautiful colonial home in Oakwood Heights, with its manicured lawn and white picket fence, was like something out of a movie representing the American dream. At hospital fundraisers, he would proudly say, "Alexandra makes it all possible," with his arm around me. I remember him holding a champagne flute as if nothing was wrong. I felt I couldn't do my job without her. Although other doctors' wives smiled politely, I could see the envy in their eyes. We had everything: 3 wonderful children, financial stability, and a partnership that had survived the hard years of medical school, residency, and Benjamin's rise to success. Or so I believed. Looking back, I wish I had seen the warning signs. Benjamin began working later, claiming the hospital was short-staffed. Weekend golf outings with colleagues became more frequent, and our conversations grew brief and businesslike. Our plans became more about scheduling the children's activities and managing household chores than about connecting as a couple. When Benjamin was promoted to chief of cardiac surgery last spring, I organized a surprise party with all his colleagues. He smiled and thanked me in front of everyone, but later he complained that I had embarrassed him in front of the hospital board. That night, he spent the evening in the guest room, citing exhaustion due to the pressures of his new role. I told my sister on the phone that it was all because of the pressure. He said the promotion came with so many responsibilities, as if men in power always needed extra hours. My sister warned, "Change is coming, Alex." I dismissed her concern as just bitterness from her own failed marriage. As time went on, Benjamin's physical distance increased. He blamed his long 18-hour surgeries for his fatigue, and when I tried to be close, he would turn away. I even bought new lingerie and set up date nights, following every suggestion in the magazines to keep the romance alive. But he participated only half-heartedly, constantly checking his phone during our planned evenings. One night, after barely tasting his favorite dinner, I asked, "Is everything okay between us?" He simply replied, "I'm just tired, Alex." The Jenkins situation is complicated. Then he retreated to his home office with the door closed, speaking in low murmurs as he took calls late into the night. I always believed in trust and privacy. I never thought of checking his phone or emails because that felt like something an insecure, paranoid person would do, not someone like me, Alexandra Davis, the devoted wife. Then, as our 15th wedding anniversary approached, I planned a romantic surprise weekend in Napa Valley, where we had once honeymooned. I needed to check his calendar, so while he was showering, I picked up his phone for just a quick look to make sure he was free for the getaway. That was all I meant to do, until a text notification popped up. The message read, "Dr. Emily Parker last night was incredible. I can't wait to feel you again. When are you leaving her?" My hand trembled as I opened the message thread. There were hundreds of texts from the past 8 months, intimate photos, and plans, being made while I was busy taking our daughter to her recital or helping the twins with their school projects. It was a cruel joke at my expense. Benjamin's message claimed Emily was planning a big anniversary surprise, and poor Emily still believed there was something to celebrate. The text was just the tip of the iceberg. That moment, my heart pounded, as all 15 years of our life together were exposed in a single message. Benjamin admitted that he'd been involved with Emily, and that he had been careful to hide every detail. I quietly replaced his phone, made his coffee as usual, kissed him goodbye when he left for the hospital, and later that night, after the children were asleep, I confronted him in the bedroom where we had once shared our dreams and overcome our hardships together. I asked him in a steady voice, "Are you having an affair with Emily Parker?" He didn't even flinch. Instead, he calmly removed his watch and placed it on the nightstand before replying, "Yes. How long does it matter?" He looked at me with such cold indifference that I barely recognized the man I once loved. I whispered, "I want a divorce." His tone was chillingly calm as he gestured around our bedroom as if it were a prison. "I've given 15 years to this marriage and to our children," he said. "I'm 45 now. If I'm to start over, it has to be right now." He reminded me of everything he thought we had built together. I argued that I had put my own career on hold to support his medical ambitions, managed our home, organized our children's lives, and hosted countless dinners to help him network. He replied as if discussing a business deal, "You'll be financially taken care of. The children will adjust. Children always do." That night, he slept in the guest room, while I lay awake, piecing together the past 15 years and wondering if anything had ever been real. The next morning, before dawn, he left for the hospital, leaving behind a business card for his lawyer on the kitchen counter. The life I thought we had built was nothing but an illusion, and I later discovered that the red lipstick stain and the affair were just the obvious cracks in a foundation that had been unstable from the start. Benjamin's betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined, and his deceit would soon turn my world upside down in ways that made his infidelity seem almost trivial. The day after Benjamin left his lawyer's card, I scheduled an appointment with Olivia Mitchell, the toughest divorce attorney in Oakwood Heights. I needed to know my options for the battle ahead. That evening, after tucking the children into bed with gentle reassurances that their dad was simply busy at the hospital, I opened our home safe. Inside, I found 15 years' worth of financial records, tax returns, investment statements, property deeds. As I sifted through the papers, I noticed discrepancies emerging like dark stains on a perfect fabric. There were monthly withdrawals of $5,000, $7,000, sometimes even $10,000 from our joint savings account to an entity called Riverside Investments, with no explanation and no paper trail. I contacted our bank the next day, and though the account manager hesitated, she eventually confirmed my suspicions. Riverside Investments was a limited liability company registered solely in Benjamin's name, and over the past 2 years, nearly $250,000 had disappeared into it. I asked Olivia if such behavior was normal in divorces, and as she examined the documents with her reading glasses, she explained that it suggested a more calculated scheme, a long-term plan. During that meeting, she also mentioned a name that had come up in another case of hers, Dr. Oliver Reynolds. Olivia said that a former colleague of my husband had left City Medical Center 3 years ago under very unusual circumstances, and that it might be worth looking into. I remembered Dr. Reynolds vaguely, quiet, dedicated, always a bit awkward at hospital events, until he suddenly disappeared from the medical scene after that. It took me 5 calls to locate his current practice, a small family clinic about 40 miles outside the city. When his receptionist heard my inquiry, she became defensive, but then immediately transferred me to Mrs. Harris. Her tone carried a weight that made my stomach tighten. I had been expecting this call for years. We eventually met at a local coffee shop halfway between our homes. Dr. Reynolds had changed. Time had etched lines on his face and given him a few premature gray hairs. Over a cup of plain black coffee, he studied me with a clinical stare and, said quietly. I knew this day would come. I just never imagined who would break. First, you with your conscience, or Benjamin with his arrogance. His words sent shivers through me as he handed over a thumb drive. Dr. Reynolds explained that there had been a problem at the fertility clinic in City Medical Center. Several. Couples had reported failed in vitro fertilization attempts despite ideal conditions. He noticed differences in lab reports and actual procedures, tiny discrepancies that didn't add up. I recalled that we had gone through 3 rounds of in vitro fertilization to conceive our twins and 2 more rounds for our daughter, each failure being heartbreaking. I had been investigating quietly, and it turned out that the clinic director, Dr. Mercer, was faking lab reports by switching specimens to keep the clinic's success rates high. When I confronted him, he admitted that Benjamin was not only aware but complicit. I couldn't believe it. Benjamin wanted children, we both did, but he had secretly arranged for his sperm never to be used, opting instead for anonymous donors while ensuring everything appeared normal. I left that meeting with the thumb drive, burning a hole in my purse and a recommendation for a discreet genetic testing service. Later that night, after the children were asleep, I gathered samples, hair from their brushes, saliva from their toothbrushes, and even one of Benjamin's combs from the master bathroom he no longer used. The wait for the test results felt endless. Meanwhile, Benjamin was pushing the divorce process along, demanding custody evaluations and claiming that my emotional state made me an unfit mother. His lawyer sent intimidating letters suggesting I couldn't support the children financially, and they offered a settlement that would barely let me survive. All the while, I maintained appearances, helping the twins with their science projects, attending our daughter's recital, and pretending nothing was amiss during school drop-offs, all while giving vague answers about Benjamin's busy schedule at the hospital. I knew that something was very wrong when I started researching medical ethics violations and fertility fraud. I found disturbing cases of doctors using their own sperm instead of donors, clinics mixing up embryos, and families discovering genetic truths decades later. Yet I never came across a case exactly like ours, a husband deliberately ensuring his children weren't biologically his, while keeping up the facade of a loving family. The testing was done on a Tuesday morning. The technician's voice was professional and detached as she asked, "Mrs. Davis, would you like us to email you the results, or would you prefer to discuss them over the phone?" I whispered, needing to see the evidence with my own eyes. The clinical language in the report did nothing to ease the blow. It confirmed that the alleged father was excluded as the biological parent of our children, with the paternity probability at 0%. I printed 3 copies, one for my lawyer, one for the safety deposit box I had in my name, and one that I tucked into a cream envelope featuring the City Medical Center logo from Benjamin's office. For weeks, I pretended nothing had changed. I no longer trembled at every phone call. Instead, the shock had transformed into a cold resolve. This wasn't just about an affair or hidden money. It was about a betrayal that had started long before our children were even conceived. Benjamin had robbed me of choice, building an elaborate lie that had shaped every aspect of our lives, including my identity as a mother. Now, with the DNA test results in hand, my grief hardened into a determination to dismantle everything he had built. I began reaching out to other families who had gone through fertility treatments at City Medical Center while Benjamin was in charge. Dr. Reynolds had given me a list of 27 couples who might have been affected. Most of them refused to talk, unwilling to question the origins of their children, but 5 agreed to meet. The Millers had twins who bore no resemblance to them. The Patels had a daughter with unexpected health issues, and the families of the Johnsons, Garcias, and Wilsons all had stories of miraculous pregnancies following many failed attempts. When Dr. Mercer took a personal interest in their cases, one of the women, Sarah Wilson, tearfully told me, "We never really asked how this could happen." My search eventually led me to Megan Turner, a former nurse who had worked at the fertility clinic for 12 years. We met at her small apartment, surrounded by filing cabinets and old records. She had kept notebooks filled with patient names, signatures, and notes on every procedural change. "I thought you destroyed all of this when you left," I asked her. Megan shook her head bitterly and explained that every time she tried to report it to the hospital administration, the ethics board, or even the police, something always stopped the investigation. "Your husband has powerful friends, Mrs. Davis," she said, showing me entries that dated back 8 years, including a page marked with my name and notes on our in vitro fertilization treatments. I took pictures of every page, every signature, every damning note as I left. Megan pressed a business card into my hand, telling me to contact the Medical Ethics Investigation Unit and ask for Agent Dawson. I did, and Agent Michael Dawson soon confirmed that he had been building a case against City Medical Center for 18 months. However, he couldn't get past the barriers surrounding the clinic. He told me that my evidence could be the key to breaking through. I committed myself to gathering everything he needed, all while pretending to accept the divorce with a smile. During mediation sessions, I agreed to temporary custody arrangements and even pretended to consider his insulting financial settlement. Benjamin, growing more confident with each concession, brought Emily to school events, introduced her to our friends, and even had her stay overnight when the children visited his new downtown apartment. I quietly recorded our co-parenting conversations, took photographs of documents, and built my case meticulously. At the same time, I hired a private investigator to dig into Emily's background. His report revealed something stunning. Emily wasn't just Benjamin's colleague and mistress. She was the daughter of a former patient, Monica Parker. Monica had been Benjamin's patient 5 years ago during a routine valve replacement that ended in tragedy when Benjamin made a serious error. Although the hospital investigation had cleared him by blaming a failure on Monica's part, the records later showed that Benjamin had been severely sleep-deprived after a weekend in Chicago with Emily. His mistake was covered up, and the family had been quietly paid off. Monica had passed away a year later from stress-induced heart failure, and Emily had changed her last name to erase her past before slowly working her way into Benjamin's life, first as a colleague, then as his lover. Her revenge had been years in the making, just like mine. At one point, I thought about confronting her directly, or even suggesting we work together, but I decided against it. While Emily's motives were raw and emotional, mine had to be calculated and precise. Over the next month, I gathered testimonies from former clinic employees, tracked the money from City Medical Center to Riverside Investments and offshore accounts, and secured sworn statements from patients whose treatments had been compromised. Agent Dawson built a legal case while I carefully orchestrated a more personal dismantling of Benjamin's false image. During one of our co-parenting discussions, I casually steered the conversation toward the fertility treatments our twins had undergone. When Benjamin tried to change the subject, I noted, "Have you ever wondered if they inherited your heart condition?" His head snapped up and he replied sharply about the condition that Dr. Reynolds had mentioned. His expression darkened as he told me that his face was unaffected. I recorded his acknowledgement, his admission that he had tested our children, without my knowledge, and his insistence on maintaining the lie of biological connection. This recording became the final piece of evidence that Agent Dawson needed. The timing couldn't have been better. The annual gala at City Medical Center was coming up, a prestigious event on the hospital's calendar. Benjamin had been selected to receive the Physician of the Year award for his groundbreaking work in cardiac surgery and his commitment to ethical standards. The invitation was still addressed to both of us, even though our divorce was in progress. Benjamin texted me that he would be taking Emily as his guest, but that I was welcome to attend if it wouldn't be too awkward. I replied that I wouldn't miss it, remarking, "You deserve this recognition." What he didn't know was that I had already met with the hospital board chair, sharing key pieces of evidence. A special session was arranged just before the ISA gala, where Agent Dawson would present the full case against Benjamin, Dr. Mercer, and the fertility clinic. I spent the day preparing for the gala in a sleek black dress, the very same dress that Emily once mocked as being too flashy. In a text to Benjamin, I sent a note with a hint of calm assurance. I soon received a notification that Benjamin and Emily would be celebrating at our old favorite restaurant, Vincenzo's, after the ceremony. That restaurant was where he had proposed to me 15 years ago, and the memory of the expensive bottle of Bordeaux we had shared 5 years earlier still lingered in my mind. At the gala, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Despite dark, stormy skies threatening outside, I entered the hotel ballroom alone in my black dress, my hair neatly styled, and my diamond earrings catching the light as I moved among the well-dressed crowd. I spotted Benjamin immediately, confidently chatting near the stage with Emily at his side. Hospital board members clustered around them, laughing and admiring their apparent perfection. Meanwhile, in a private room, the board chair and Agent Dawson had just finished a special meeting where evidence, including financial records, patient testimonies, and detailed documentation, was laid out. The expressions on their faces shifted from doubt to shock and then to grim resolve. Benjamin's legal team had already contacted the district attorney. Benjamin, unaware of any of this, accepted congratulations for his upcoming award. He thought nothing of it as he received his crystal trophy, stating into the microphone, "Medicine is not just science, it is a sacred trust that demands ethical behavior at every moment." I watched Emily during his speech, noticing the tension in her posture and the forced warmth in her smile. Our eyes met briefly across the room, a silent acknowledgement between two women who had seen the real Benjamin Harris for who he truly was. After the ceremony, Benjamin and Emily left for Vincenzo's as planned. I followed them quietly, clutching a cream envelope containing the final evidence. At the restaurant, the familiar white tablecloths, soft lighting, and gentle Italian music provided a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me. As soon as the hostess recognized me, she greeted me politely. Benjamin saw me first, and his expression shifted from surprise to smug confidence. Emily tried to adjust her features into a mask of concern, but I approached their table calmly and said, "You told the staff I might join you out of courtesy. I didn't think you'd really expect me to show up." Emily shifted uncomfortably, and Benjamin demanded, "Emily, do you recognize what I'm talking about?" His voice wavered slightly when I added, "Or should I call you Emily Parker?" The color drained from her face, and Benjamin looked confused, asking, "What do you mean?" I replied firmly, "You know exactly what I mean. Your secret is out." At that moment, I placed the cream envelope on the table. "Congratulations on your freedom," I said quietly. Benjamin's hand trembled as he opened it and read the DNA test results. His face went from confusion to disbelief and then to horror as the truth finally sank in. "Is this for real?" he whispered. "So you made sure your sperm was never used during our in vitro fertilizations, that you falsified the records, and that you lied about our children's true origins?" Emily stared at the paper, then at Benjamin, her expression blank. Benjamin snapped, trying to regain control, and said, "Alexandra, you're making up stories because you can't accept our divorce." I replied, "Then explain this evidence to the hospital board," gesturing toward the entrance where board members and Agent Dawson were already waiting. Benjamin's face contorted with anger as he tried to choose his next words carefully. Before he could speak further, Agent Dawson stepped forward and declared, "Dr. Benjamin Harris, you are under arrest for medical fraud, financial crimes, and ethical violations under the Medical Practice Act." The restaurant fell silent as Dawson recited the Miranda rights. Emily sat there stunned by the unfolding events, while I felt a deep sense of retribution. "After all these years," Benjamin hissed as an officer handcuffed him, "you had 15 years of a perfect life, and I only needed 3 months to expose every lie." They led him away, and Emily remained at the table, quietly staring at her half-empty wine glass. "I didn't know about the children," she whispered. "I believe you," I replied softly. "Your mother deserved justice, too." In the weeks that followed, the story broke out in both medical and mainstream news. Benjamin faced multiple felony charges, his medical license was suspended pending trial, and the fertility clinic was shut down for a full investigation. Scores of families came forward, demanding answers about their children's real origins. Financial repercussions were swift and severe. Benjamin's hidden assets were frozen, and a forensic accountant was brought in to trace every dollar he had diverted. My children's future was secured through a trust set up with the recovered funds. After Benjamin's preliminary hearing, Dr. Oliver Reynolds approached me. City Medical Center announced that it would establish an ethics review committee to oversee reproductive services when it reopened, and they asked me to lead it. I congratulated him sincerely and even suggested that we co-chair the committee together, as my perspective would be invaluable. For 15 years, I had been known as Alexandra Davis, the supportive wife, but now I was being asked to step into my own identity. 6 months after the gala, I met Emily at a quiet restaurant. Our unlikely alliance had formed during the legal battle. Two women, manipulated by the same man, united by our shared pain. "Do you regret it?" Emily asked, hinting at everything that had happened, and the truth our children would eventually learn. I thought for a moment and said, they will learn that their origins aren't what we believed, but that won't change who they are or how much I love them. Even though our lives had been built on lies, I chose honesty, however difficult it might be. That night, watching my children sleep in the home we still kept despite Benjamin's efforts to force me out, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction or revenge, but a true sense of freedom. The illusion of the perfect family had shattered, leaving behind a life that was messy, complicated, and entirely my own.